Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Well, hello. Welcome, Gwen.
Hello.
This is now our live stream of episode 149 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I know, 149.
Wow.
Can you believe it?
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stories. A lot of people.
It is a lot of stories. It is a lot. So today we are talking about self-care. And the reason we're talking about self-care is because I think it's something that I need help with. And you were saying earlier, like, well, you get to pick the topic. So whatever you feel like we need to talk about, I can talk about. And I think this is what I need to talk about.
Yeah.
Because that's what everybody has been kind of telling me lately. It's like, you need to take care of yourself. You need to do a better job taking care of yourself. And I think I do need to do a better job taking care of myself, but it's kind of hard to know how to do that sometimes. And I just knew you would know.
It is. There's so much to unpack in there. And I think the first thing is to be kind to yourself. I mean, we put so much pressure and we take care of everyone else. And I do think as moms and, we're taking care of the car, the house, the kids, the everything. And we keep pushing ourselves. And I think the further we're out in our grief, we push ourselves to keep going. And we forget that we are still and always will be grieving. So then where does the neutral come in, where you can put it in neutral for a while? And again, as we've talked about, that's hard. The world's not going to do that for you. I mean, no one in your practice is going to come up to you and say, Marcy, do you need to go into neutral? Would you like to just glide for a while? Or, it's not going to happen.
No, that's what I feel like I need. And we're getting close to 4 years now. It'll be just a very short time away. And it's getting to the point when, it's brought up and people ask, I'm almost feel embarrassed to say it's been 4 years. Like if I'm getting emotional, like I'm getting emotional right now. And because I almost feel like I'll be judged a little bit. Like I should say, oh, like it would be okay if I said it's been 6 months or it's been a year or maybe even a year and a half. But now that it's 4, I shouldn't be like this and tearing up. You know what I mean?
I do. Well, again, you should on yourself. And I
know.
I do think that there are times that you can talk and tell your story or say something in a conversation, whether it's in your practice with people at a dinner, and you don't get emotional. But the times we put ourselves on the hook are the times that we do. Those are the ones that you remember. And I guess what I think of it as, it's always so close. Like it's never going to go really far away. So it's no wonder that it seeps out. So what I take in a tears from someone who is 4 years out, 8 years out, 26 years out, as one mom described to me, that well of sorrow is always inside of her, but she's not drowning in it, but it comes just like that.
Yeah.
So those tears that you have, you're not drowning right now. You're not in the spot you were before, but just like that can come. Yeah. And so again, that's probably where some of the pressure comes too, in that pushing ourselves, is that we're not, we feel like we should be in a different spot than we are.
Yeah. And that's what I feel like too. And I feel this kind of responsibility, too. I've kind of put myself in a role that ends up making me feel like I should be doing better and I should be the one to help, not the one to ask for help. And that's because that I've done to myself in many ways.
But you are helping in the way, you are still helping. Your grief or what you're experiencing has not stopped you from helping people. But what you think is maybe if I'm leading people, I'm listening to their stories, I'm further along, that you should be feeling differently.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you are still helping people. And when you have those moments, it just means that it's close. It's just still there, and it's always going to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think about when I think about taking care of ourselves, and you've heard me say this before when we talk professionally to caregivers, is that a musician takes care of his instrument because that's what he's got. Like if he does not go on stage with an untuned guitar or piano or their instruments falling apart. Mm-hmm. And nor does a carpenter come to do the job at your house without their tools already.
Yeah.
You are the tool that's helping people in your job.
Yeah.
In the podcast. So in order to be well and fit for that, you have to take care of you.
Well, and I don't even think, I think more generally you can say that as just to be a mom.
Oh, absolutely.
Wife,
yes. Not just, yes.
Yes. Or sister or friend, or all of those roles. In order to try to do those roles well,
yes,
you do need to try to take care of yourself.
They require us to do that. And so, and it's a constant job, of, one of the analogies that comes to my mind, which is more of, I use this when I'm talking about people who want to help the bereaved, is I always say, make sure you're not going into their house with dirty boots. And it doesn't mean that our boots are going to be perfect and clean or that our boots don't have experience, but you don't wear your dirty boots into someone else's house. So in doing the work that you do or being a bereaved mom, we can never polish it up to the point that it's not there. And sometimes the boots just need to be taken off and rinsed and cleaned. I don't know if that's a good analogy, but
no, I think it is a good analogy, actually.
Yeah.
To think about trying, because instead of, trying to go through the house and take care of everyone and do all of this stuff still with your boots muddy.
Yeah.
If you take a little bit of time to try to clean off your own boots first, to try to clean up some of your own mess first, then you probably will be able to better do that job of whatever it is, whatever role you're in, or work or home or whatever that is.
And that reminds me of when you hear on airplanes, to put your mask on first before you put on someone else's. But I think we get into a rut and we are feeling better, we are doing better, or we're in a spot. And then before we know it, we're back to a depleted state. So I think, some of the barriers that we might not even be aware of that create us to get to that spot, because we don't always think about it, or what makes us, not take care of ourselves. Sometimes it's the weather. I'm going to go there. We can blame the weather. I don't walk because it's yucky. I mean, right now, I don't like to do my exercising outside because it's so hot, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So we can do the weather. The other thing that I think is a barrier for us to take care of ourselves is the digital devices.
Yeah. Well, it can be just distracting.
Yeah. We feel, when we're feeling low and you get to that point when you realize maybe you are burnt out and aren't taking care of yourself, we get down on ourselves, then we feel low, and then we pile on more, so we feel even lower. Then it's hard when you're that low, and have that much piled up. Another thing is giving ourselves permission to try to feel better, because sometimes I think we fear the process, and it's okay to say, I'm going to take care of myself and I'm going to try to feel better. Another one is living outside the bounds of accountability, because oftentimes we get to the point that we don't tell other people what we're struggling with, and they don't know, so then no one can keep us accountable.
Yeah.
So if you have, if you're in counseling, you have a counselor helping you, or you're in a group and your group members are helping you, or you're in just a small group, or you have one best friend that you say, hey, I'm going to aim to do something this week for myself, then you're going to be held accountable. Mm-hmm. But when we're feeling so low and we have stopped taking care of ourselves, we've stopped telling people.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that reminds me, I've told you this, but recently I decided took a couple of weeks off from the podcast. Mm-hmm. You all wouldn't have noticed this because we still released every week just like normal. But I'd gotten like about 3 or so ahead and just had them all ready to go and said, I'm just going to take some time. Mm-hmm. And the therapist that I'm seeing was like, okay, because I had like a week and a half off of work. You need to do something to care for yourself every single day when you are up north at the cottage and do something just for you every day. And so I go up and I have every intention of doing that. Every intention. Mm-hmm. And I get up there and about 2-3 days in, first couple of days we went out golfing, we did some stuff, we were active. And then I get a call from my home in Iowa that my grandmother is dying in the very end stages of her life. And so I'm now getting daily updates. I'm trying to think about how I'm going to get home. All of this. And then she dies. And then the next day they plan the funeral. Then I have to fly to Iowa. So all of my planned self-care then turned into revisiting my own grief. And I mean, she was 92 years old. So she lived a long life, and she lived 21 years past my grandfather. She lived 27 years after her daughter, my mother's, so 27 years alone. But I kept, and that's funny because that brought up so much of my mom, right? It brought up so much of that grief from my mom, and even, we're even going to the funeral, and they had my Aunt Susie's family line up to go, and then my Uncle Larry's family line up to go, like into the church. See, nobody even knew my mom. They didn't even know she existed. Yeah. So nobody even remembered that. My brother and I were part of that family too. So it was hard. I mean, I just kind of said to Ryan, we're going with Aunt Susie and we're just pretending to be part of her family because I didn't want to be like relegated to the back of the church,
right?
Because we weren't,
the
same. So it was hard. It was hard. And it just kept me thinking too of like, oh, I mean, I just was thinking how I don't want to live to be 92 years old. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it just was a lot. So in that time that I had promised that I would take care of myself, instead, I was like revisiting my grief again. So it's like, and that really felt I think I felt pretty defeated.
Yeah. Did it make you angry? I mean, or that
it didn't make me angry, but it just made me think, why did I even try? Why did I even promise myself this? Because it can't happen anyway. Well, right. And then, so the end of my vacation, the end of my week and a half was spent at the funeral and flying there and then flying home the next day. And then I'm off to work. And it just was like, when people asked, they came back like, oh, how was your vacation? You were gone forever. Like, well, my grandma died. I mean, like that was my vacation.
Yeah.
So
that was out of your control.
It was out of my control.
Yeah.
It
something
was.
That you can't control. So those things are going to happen. But then now what can you control going back in? And one of the first thoughts that comes to my mind is you do not have to jump back into everything you were doing pre-vacation. Like, what are some things that you can scale back on, or just say, I'm going to try to build in some time here and do a redo a little bit?
Well, and that's, I think, the point too, is that in some ways I put so much pressure on okay, this is my week and a half that I've got to like get myself better. I don't know. I recently like heard somebody talking about, like somebody asking what is a vacation is not a cure to a busy life or something.
It's I said that in the seminar. So a vacation is not the answer to an unsustainable pace.
Right. There you go. That's what it was.
Pace is the answer to an unsustainable pace.
So that made me think of that, because then I thought to myself, here I had put it all on this vacation that I was going to give to kind of rebuild myself up. But in all actuality, I just need to look at the pace and change the pace of how it is every day.
Right. So let's talk about that. I want to do 2 other barriers that I think keep us.
And I do want to see too, somebody's written a comment here. Is it okay to share a thought? So that would be great. So go ahead and write in that thought, and then I'll just talk about it here too.
So. Is that learning to say no to others. And that's one of our things, is learning to say no. And then sometimes we have to ditch the list, because we have a list of so many things we want to accomplish, and we don't usually put self-care on the list, but it needs to, personal growth and healing needs to be a part of that. So let's go to what you were saying about the pace.
Yeah.
So what we tell bereaved people is that when the death occurs, and whether you ever talk to a professional or not, your body, everything tells you, I can't sustain the level I was at. Like you just go, wait a minute, something huge happened to me. I got to sort this out. You put the brakes on, right? And put my hands out like this. So we naturally do that after a death. But then before we know it, we're chugging along at the same pace we were before. And that isn't always realistic. And so we do always have to reevaluate, where am I, overworking, extending myself because I'm not feeling well. I'm not taking care of me. I don't have that. And you've heard me say this before, but what I challenge people to do is write Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So the 7 days of the week. And then on the side, write morning, noon, and night. And put an X every time you have an obligation. So on Monday, if you have an obligation Monday, you already know you don't have any empty spaces, do you?
No, I don't. I'm sure I don't. Not much anyway.
Right.
Might be a little bit.
The live
I was trying to think, I could take
solved.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah. I do that. I look at my calendar and I have to guard those spaces just for life, just to be open if you do get invited. It's interesting because a friend texted me this afternoon and said, what are you doing tomorrow night? And I said, well, I have a 5:00 call that will last about 45 minutes. She lives about 3 hours away. And I thought, well, maybe she's coming through town. I didn't hear from her. I texted her back. Why'd you ask? She said, well, there was a chance I could have gotten some tickets to a concert in Mount Pleasant, and I wanted to know if you could go. And my first response was, I have this appointment. But then I looked, is there any other night this week? I couldn't have tonight, right? Last night I'm on a golf league. I do have Monday and Friday. But so if we're never able to just at the last minute go to a concert, we're not living in a pace that... So I would challenge people, if you have 21 marks, you have to find a space where you can say, I'm not planning anything in this, and just allow ourselves to be. And then when we are in that space, sometimes, meaning we've blocked off a night where we're not doing anything, we try to fill it with, look, now I can rearrange that cupboard, or now I can look through, finally get my photo albums organized. No, that's not what it's for. It's just to be. And creativity is limited when we don't have that white space.
Yeah. So let's read this comment.
Okay.
That Brandolyn, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is wrote in. So she said, is it okay to share a thought? And she's awesome. Thank you. When you were talking just now, the word capacity came to mind. When my mom first passed away in 2020, I was talking to a friend that used this word. At the time, I didn't have the capacity to take on all that I wanted to. I've noticed this is true in other seasons of life after she passed, that I only have the capacity to handle so much. And that really does ebb and flow based on what is going on in my life. And I've come to see that it's okay if I can't handle everything. Yeah, more to it than that.
I don't see the rest.
No, I don't either.
Oops,
so
did I put that on there?
I think I did.
Okay.
I just put it on the screen.
Yeah, that's a great word. That's a great word. Like, I just don't have the capacity. And when I was mentioning one of the barriers are having to say no, some of you who know me know that I had a real problem with the word no. So what I say now is that doesn't work for me right now. And that gives me some permission to say it might work later. It doesn't work right now. And I love that, to say, I just don't have the capacity, although I'd love to take that on right now. I just don't have the space.
So she finished her comment there. It's okay that she can't handle everything that she could before her mom died.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that is a great word to think about, to use in capacity.
Right. Well, let's go back to a few other things that early on, this is what the, experts say, is that with any rite of passage, you need to rest 3 times a day for at least 20 to 30 minutes. Doesn't say sleep. It just means rest your body, or you will get sick. And rite of passage, graduations, birthdays, anniversaries, holiday, what else? Weddings, marriage, everything that goes on. A death is a huge one. But do we ever really take that time to just rest and be? So one of the things that I've created in my house is I have it's a double chair, and sometimes I do invite people to sit in it, but I have a bookshelf, I have a cool lamp, I have a little block that says Mom Cave on the windowsill by it. But that's my replenishing place. That's where I get up in the morning and I do my morning, devotions. But I try to sit in that a couple times a day just to take a few minutes to shut my brain and my body off. It's not napping, but even today, when I looked at the busy day that I had, knowing that I was coming on here, I built in about 20 minutes just to sit in my space and just be. The greatest.
Well, it reminds me of Andy's favorite Bible verse, "Be still," right?
Yeah.
I have "Be still," that I wish I wear my "Be still" bracelets. And
exactly.
I do want to say, though, that I think the fear that bereaved parents can have about that taking 20 minutes 3 times a day is that I think it can be scary of where your head's going to go.
Right.
That if you're not doing something, that you'll be just lost in the sorrow and the crying, and it will be overwhelming. Because I know a lot of people feel like, I just need to keep busy. I need to keep doing something, because they're just scared of that alternative, really.
But yes, that fear that if I slow down, right, and what thoughts will come. But the other part of that, it reminds me of a quote from Lily Tomlin: if you win the rat race, you're still a rat. So if you stay on the cycle of, I'm going to stay so busy, that's what you're going to win. That's it.
Yeah. Well, and I just wanted to point that out, because I know there are going to be a lot of people that feel that way.
Right.
I do love that you have found a specific location in your house that gives you peace and comfort. So I think that could be something that people could take as like, let's just find a place that fills me up, that gives me a little bit of peace and a little bit of comfort. So if you've got a location like that, like for me, except it's been so hot, but it's outside of my deck, and I've got a comfy chair out there, and I just feel more at peace when I'm doing that, and I can just sit and read a book, or anyway, it's calming to me. It's filling for me.
When is the last time you've done that?
Oh no, I've been trying to do that.
Good.
Yeah. Good. I mean, I sat and read a little bit today, not outside because it was just hot.
Yeah.
But
right. No. And I do agree. A place doesn't have to be a chair in your house. I mean, it can be outside. It can be the beach. It can be, some people it's the woods. Some people it's a garden, the flower garden. It's what, nature does it for a lot of people. That refuels us. So that brings us to some of the things that we can do is that we do have to find activities that do refuel us. And then my question would be, again, when is the last time you've done it? Because unless you make a habit of it, it doesn't, we forget. And we're so easy to put that aside when we're busy taking care of everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is a key thing. And then the other thing that I don't want us to neglect is the social support or what we're doing socially to take care of ourselves. There's a lot in this one.
Yeah. Well, and you just shared a story before we started recording that I think you should share now that would fit with that too. And it goes along with being in social situations and expectations.
Right. Yes,
so,
and self-care. So I
self-care,
recently learned of a young widow who was a few years out in her grief, was invited to a wedding, and she told her friend, who was someone involved in the wedding, not the bride, but maybe the mother of the bride. I don't know. I know very few details, but what I do know is that she set some boundaries for herself and just said, I'm not sure how much I can make it to with my emotions. I will come to the parts that I can, and the friend was fine with that. However, as the evening went on, this person left, but another person who was widowed only 1 month stayed the entire evening. Then her friend reported back to her, like, you must be the broken one because this woman stayed for the whole time. Where here she was setting a self-care boundary for herself, or just stating what she could handle and not handle, which was so wise.
Yeah.
But then
you have no idea what was going on in that other woman's mind. You don't have any idea what's going on in anyone's mind, but it could have been just torture for her, or it could have been she's still so much in shock that it wasn't even feeling much.
I said she's so numb. She can't. It's not even sunk in what happened, and she's still in that phase where you're walking around like a zombie, and someone says you really should go to that wedding, and she goes, "Oh, okay, I think I'll go," because she doesn't even know.
Right. Exactly.
And so even when we try to do these things to take care of ourselves, how others treat us. So it's like we have to defend it then. And that's why I think finding some of the things that you can do quietly on your own that refill you, where you're not, it doesn't include other people, but sometimes socially we do need other people. We're not meant to do this alone. And so two things come to my mind is that, to have a mixture of people we hang out with, and the people who fill you up, because we don't want to spend time with people who deplete us, but the people who fill us up, to make sure that we have them in our life. Like, when's the last time you had lunch with them? So to plan those times socially with people.
Well, it's funny because you spoke about that and some talks that we had recently done too, about who fills you up and spending time with them. And I then went and called my aunt in Las Vegas, and I said, we're thinking about coming out for Thanksgiving. Gwen says I need to spend time with people that fill me up, and I haven't seen you since before the pandemic, and you fill me up. And my cousin Teresa, who lives in Las Vegas, they both just kind of fill me up. And I thought, I need to go there. What is holding me back? Let's go out and spend some time with them.
So, is that on your calendar?
Well, yes. I mean, I don't have tickets yet, and I haven't, any of that, but that is what we are really thinking about doing.
That's good. And that's
just to try to do something that fills me up. Right?
Is, to me, anticipation is part of the joy too of going places and having that. So having something on your calendar that you can look forward to, that is this thing. And I'm not saying, and this, that there's going to be some hard moments, right? I mean, there's just going to always be, you don't necessarily leave your grief at home, but you're with people who you do enjoy, and there'll be laughter and things that are good for your soul. And so to have those scheduled and planned that we can look forward to. And I'll tell you what, I grew up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And so, my girlfriends live far away from me, but we schedule in time to be together. And it's so good that it lasts almost a year, but I can tell that we're running short. We got to, it's coming up. So it's good for us.
That makes me think of my college friends. I should get together with them too. We should do a little more. Are you right?
Yes. Well, and I just mentioned good for your soul. So, mind, body, and soul. So we'll get to body in a minute, but the soul part, we don't want to neglect that. But what the proverb says is a cheerful heart is good medicine. That's sometimes being around people who really do, give us those good laughs and cheer us up and just make us feel, they feed our soul. That's good medicine. So build that in, plan for it. Say, this is good for me to do.
Right. Yeah. And really think about those people that fill you up.
Yeah.
And try to surround yourselves with them.
I've tried very hard, especially because of the work that I did. So I won't ramble on and on, but I do want to clarify that the work that I did taught me about things that were important. So when our kids were little, and especially because all the years of infertility and our babies that died, when God gave us a baby, I wasn't going many places, right? I wasn't going to every candle party I was invited to, or purse party, or 31 bags or whatever, because I knew it was going to go by quick, and I had prayed and longed for them for so long. But what I also know is that as a mom, sometimes you get to this point that says, if I don't get out of this house, I'm going to lose my mind. You get to that? So I tried to keep this balance of, why do we wait till we're going to lose our mind versus not going to every whim of a thing? So I strategically picked and planned the cream of the crop. I wasn't leaving my kids just for anything. It was going to be good, right? The best concerts. I have a girlfriend that when our kids were growing up, we picked 2 great concerts a year and we just went,
wow.
The music, the whatever, and we still do that. And so, just, we can be strategic too. And still take care of our family and take care of things. So, so the soul, we don't want to neglect that. Laughter is good for the soul. Just any kind of growth in what you believe in, or meditation, or, breathing, and just things that are good for your soul. We want to make sure we do.
We've been doing some yoga this summer, actually. So
really? Who's we?
Well, my grief support group that we had through Starlight, which if anyone's interested in joining our fall group, you can contact starlightmen.org, go to the website, or email Stephanie at starlightmen.org, and they can do an intake and get you set up to be a part of that. But, the women in the group were feeling a little nervous, and I was too, about going the whole summer without anything. Yeah. Right? It's kind of scary. Like, we've had this every week. We do every week for 6 weeks, and then you have about 3 off, and then you do 6 weeks again. But it's been the whole year. Many of us have been together. And so the idea of going all summer seemed kind of daunting. So one of my, wonderful moms, Erin, who has been on the podcast, does yoga and did some Zoom yoga. And so we're having her do Zoom yoga sessions for us every other week in the summer. And it's been really good. And the yoga itself has been really good. Yes. I mean, that has been helpful, because there have been days where I come and I don't realize just how tense I am until we get to the end. And I was like, wow, that really helped. I was feeling a lot in my shoulders or a lot here, and now that tension is much better. And just to still have that little bit of connection has been really, really valuable.
Oh, that is a perfect example. And that's good for your body and your soul and your mind. I was going to look if while we're talking, I thought I had a quote about yoga and how good it is for you. I'll just see if I can find it. But, with the breath and the whole part of that.
Well, and it's funny because last week we had a session, and I kept getting emails from the women of the group that they couldn't do it. Like, somebody had COVID and someone else had a fever, so probably also had COVID. And, because we're from across the country, we're not like close by here. And anyway, and it just like they had this activity or vacation or whatever, and it seemed like they were dropping like flies. So I sent out a message saying, who's really going to be there? Because I was really considering canceling. And then there were 6 that wrote back and said, well, I was planning on it, but we can reschedule if you want. And like, well, if there are 6, 7 including me, or maybe it was 6 including me. But anyway, I thought, well, that's enough, right? That's enough that we did it. And oh my word, we were all so glad we did. I mean, I think in some ways it was the best one we had. And I was one that like, I'm not in the mood for this today. I was kind of looking for an excuse to cancel, to be honest.
Right.
But then once I had 5 or 6 people right back that were going to do it, I thought I should do it. Oh my gosh, it was so helpful to me. It really was. And I hadn't realized how much I needed it, you know?
Yes. I have another I'm in a discipleship group with 4 ladies, and I kind of said, "Should we take the summer off?" And they're like, "No, we want to keep going." Well, then I said, "Should we take July off because people get busy?" "No, we want to keep going." Well, July, it's been hard to get everyone, oh, I'm gone here, I'm gone there. Well, this past week, after skipping several, 3 of the 4 of us could go. And they said, "Let's just do it." And kind of like you, I was like, "Oh, okay, well, we're going to, so-and-so's going to miss out, and it's a small group anyway." We just went and had just conversation and spoken, like, "How are you doing?" And spoken to each. It was so awesome. And that time, but it's scheduled in, like, you knew that you had to go, even when you try to get out of it, it's scheduled.
I know, which I feel kind of guilty about. Now I'm admitting it to all of these people that are probably listening, but
I get it. But again, when we have those things that are good for us to go, there's a reason they're good for us, and just that fellowship. And one of the things that you and I were talking about before we got on the air was about social support and like the groups not meeting in the summer, how important it is to have your community of people. So just people who don't, I love the fact that you put in a plug for the group and they can get connected and have that this community that you have through the podcast. And now Andy's mom has offered that for a lot of people. And that's what we want to give, right? That sense of community, and they belong. And can be replenished. And
I do think we help fill each other. There's no question we
do.
Oh,
absolutely. Absolutely. And what it does is just even hearing someone else's pain lets us realize that we're not alone in ours.
Yeah.
Right. So back to our body, filling ourselves, mind, body, and soul, and taking care of ourselves. So you mentioned yoga. We talked about exercise and that sort of thing. I mean, it is good to move your body, and you don't have to do a whole fit workout, but just to go around and clear your mind, walk around the house, walk around the block. When you're feeling like I'm going to lose it here, it really is good to do that. Even breath work.
Yeah.
A good sigh, breathing. I do sigh a lot. It's kind of my transition or my letting go of, okay, I do that.
It's so funny because I didn't realize how much you can involuntarily do that, the sighing.
Yeah.
Who I really noticed doing it was after Andy died, Eric, my husband, would sigh a lot. And he didn't realize he was doing it at all.
Yeah.
But I just was noticing like that's just something he didn't used to do before. Right. And I didn't think I mentioned it, and I don't even think he realized he was doing it at all. But in some ways, it must have done something for him, right? And I probably was doing it too. Actually, you just don't notice it in yourself quite as much.
Yeah, it's a release. It's a buildup. It's a transition. It's it's many different things, but a sigh is good. Some people say to use words with the sigh. Like if you are overwhelmed with something, I mean, if you say, I did all I could, whatever that is. I have one that I do. It's right here on my sticky note to remind myself that I breathe in, thank you.
Yeah.
And I breathe out, but I'm going to trust in you.
Okay.
So in those times where I just don't know or feel overwhelmed, that's what I turn to. And I spend a few moments breathing in, thank you, and breathing out, but I will trust in you, or I'm going to trust in you.
Well, and speaking of breathing exercises, I was just thinking about this today, actually, because I know I've said on the podcast many, many times, and everyone knows that my son Andy's favorite Bible verse was "Be still and know that I am God." Psalms 46:10. And what we used to do with that is he was a very anxious kid. He had lots of anxiety struggles. And I had learned in a Bible study years and years and years before, I think when Andy was an infant, actually, this breathing exercise where you would repeat the whole Bible verse, be still and know that I am God. And then you say it again, but you take away the last word. So the next time it was be still and know that I am. And then it's be still and know that I. And so you take away and you think about it at the end of every time because it means something a little bit different once you take away every word. And so then the final time you go through it, it's just be. So you're just
I love that. I'm writing that
so
one
I
down.
used to do this with Andy constantly. And in fact, the last time we did it together was the day before he died. He was nervous about going to soccer practice. And I said, Andy, have you done your breathing? Have you done your Bible verse? And so we did it together. We all did it at his funeral together. As a whole congregation to try to kind of do that, to try to be still. And anyway, I was thinking about it today because as much as I have my bracelet, my silver bracelet that I wear that has the entire Bible verse on it, be still, know that I'm God. I've got all sorts of little bracelets that I've given away.
Right. I have one.
I've given one to you that says be still. And I have it up in my house. I have it kind of everywhere and everyone knows this. And it's on Andy's at the cemetery on his grave and everything. But I have neglected to do the exercise, the breathing exercise, to actually say the Bible verse when I'm feeling stressed out. And it just hit me today of all days when I'm thinking about self-care. You should really do that again because it was extremely helpful to Andy. It always, by the time we got to be, he was always much more calm, much more centered and ready to face what he needed to face.
Yeah.
And I need to take that because I was the one that always made him do it. Right. So I need to learn from myself there and start doing that because I think that would be some kind of self-care to help get me in a better frame of mind.
It's huge. And that is beautiful. I had never heard you say that before. I love it. What it reminds me of is the fact that probably all of our listeners have something that has worked for them in the past that they have neglected. So I think your challenge to yourself to say, you should do that,
right,
could be their challenge as well. And it doesn't have to be what you're doing.
Oh, no,
what has worked for them, right? What is it that worked that you're neglecting that you could go back to?
Well, what made me think of it was you saying your sticky note. Your sticky note. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. Because I was just thinking how I need to do that today. And it's really the same. It's the same type of thing. It's just a reminder to yourself to help kind of calm and center yourself.
Yeah. It's interesting because when I, let's say, was, leading people at Starlight with the staff and everything, I would build in things that were just good for our soul or just, let's just, not a to-do list, not something we have to accomplish. But what I just recently learned about 2 weeks ago, after working for myself for a year and a half, I don't build those in. Right? Because it's just me sitting in this space and I don't do it. So
because you're not prioritizing yourself as much as you prioritized all the volunteers that you were organizing.
Yeah. And so that good self-care, and what it was for me, that was the realization, is there was a conference in Grand Rapids. It was called Speak Up. It's a writer and speakers conference. And I had known about it for a long time. And I probably went on the website 20 times to sign up, and then I didn't. And what I did was I went back into my overanalyzing, overthinking self of, what is the value? Am I going to learn? Is it good to take those 3 days away from the office? It was all of that decision making. And I didn't sign up. The conference started July 5th. On the morning of July 1st, I woke up and I thought, oh, they probably closed registration July 1st, right?
Right.
And I got sad. And I thought, oh, if I'm sad, then that means I probably really want to go. So I signed up on July 1st, went to it. And what I realized there was that it was just good for my soul, not necessarily all the stuff professionally, but spiritually, being in touch with just other women to sit at the table with at lunch and talk and share life. I felt like I had coworkers, like, we were 3 days. It was so good for me. So again, to take those practices that we know were good and implement them for ourselves. And I'd love to hear people write in the comments, either now or when you listen to this broadcast, of maybe something that you can think, yeah, I've let that practice go and I'm going to make sure I do that.
Well, and I also wanted to take this time too, if anybody has a question or a comment that they want Gwen to answer, or me, or whatever, it would be a great time to do that if you want to write something in. Don't feel pressure that you have to, for sure, but I just want to take that opportunity before we kind of end here.
Yeah.
We've got a little bit of time left.
Yes. And I have two last things that I was thinking about, and I don't know if you want them now, but, so we did, body and soul and mind, we're all intertwined. And we talked about social and make sure you're doing fun things or that sort of thing. But our mind, and I think that goes back to the devices and other things, is what are we filling our mind with? And I know a lot of violence or, just books that we read. I had a friend once say that she had to stop filling her mind with some of the books she was reading because it wasn't good for her marriage, because she looked at her husband differently, so we have to watch what we're taking in too, and really take in stuff that's good for us.
Well, and I had said to Eric, we were watching, I don't know what we were watching on TV, but it wasn't like it was horrible, but it was pretty violent at night. And it was a few weeks ago, and I said, I can't watch that at night anymore. I just can't. I'm realizing I don't sleep well. I don't, it was funny because we'd been watching this show on TV that was violent. And one night we decided to go to the movies instead. And we went to the Downton Abbey movie. Okay. Downton Abbey, that TV show, they have a new movie out. Of course, it's the Downton Abbey movie. It's not violent. It's not like there's nothing like horrible on it. And I came home and I said to Eric the next day, I slept so much better after watching Downton Abbey than I did after watching these other shows that we've been watching. We got to get something more like Downton Abbey, or else I've just got to read or whatever. Because if it gets too late, I just can't watch anything like that anymore.
Well, that brings me back to a practice that I have. I mean, I've been doing grief work for 35 years, so I've had to protect myself too from carrying everybody else's pain. So one of the things that I love movies, and I would go to movies to replenish me and just, sit back and have the popcorn and just want to be entertained. But there was a season where I couldn't go to any of the movies because they were all about death or someone dying and sadness. I mean, there's a lot of these movies that are just too sad for, then were not what I needed at that time. And I went to a couple where they were comedy or, romance, and then someone died. And then I was mad. I was like, I was in here to replenish my soul and somebody died. So I've had to watch that. I really have, just like you. Like, we need things that fill us up.
So we've had a few little comments here. Yeah, the one just talking about social situations are not self-care for me. It causes too much anxiety. I 100% agree.
Yep.
Carolyn. Oh my gosh. I am an introvert kind of person. So when I go to those big social kind of things, they just suck energy out of me.
Yeah.
And it's really, really hard. So I do well. I'm filled up when I'm in small groups, but when it's big, it is an energy suck, and so much more now after Andy died. All of those kind of events and things like that we've gone to in the past that I've never loved. Now I dread, because it's just, I don't know what it is, but it's just so much worse.
Yep. So again, that wouldn't be something they'd put on their calendar for self-care at all. So
no.
But
for me, like a little group thing would be, but a big social thing would not at all be, for sure.
Yep.
So it's good to know yourself, I would say. And then we've got this wonderful comment about journaling being helpful. That's an excellent point. I'm so glad you brought that up because we haven't mentioned that. And that is so precious to so many people.
Because one of my notes here was keep it simple. It doesn't have to be elaborate. I mean, journaling, music, call a friend, take a bath, those kinds of simple things. But journaling is not only just not elaborate, it's just you and the paper, and it's so therapeutic.
Oh, and then I got a comment on loving Downton Abbey. So, but then this one too is seeing someone on TV on life support. Oh yeah,
knocks you right back. I'm sure. Yeah,
I mean, it's just It's just so triggering. These things, these events can be super, super triggering.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot, I think, too.
And so thinking to our minds too is, if your mind tells you that you don't deserve self-care, or you shouldn't take the time for yourself, or that's being selfish, because some people do have that track running in their head, or they weren't ever, allowed to think of themselves that was considered selfish. We have to retrain our brains on that, because we could be our own worst enemy in that.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. That's an easy thing to get sucked into that and go down that path.
So the last thing that I had, there's so many things out there that you can Google about creative ways. I mean, whatsyourgrief.com has 64 self-care ideas for people who are grieving, and there's a whole bunch of them. And so, if you really want to say, I need help developing my list, it's out there. You just Google it, and they've got a lot of them. But I think what the points that I wrote down to just want to make sure we say is, you have to identify what your needs and what your values are. What do you value in this, and how important is it to take care of yourself? Then boundaries in regards to relationship and time. You have to guard your time. You have to guard relationships. You have to guard things that, we have to guard our marriages. We have to, make those boundaries. I think self-care needs that strong boundary as well. That you guard that and say, this is important. A support system, but beyond support, a circle of trust.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. That is a lot more than just a support system.
Because I challenged you when we were talking earlier. I know a couple of relationships that are really, bonded in trust, and said, when have you been with them? And you said, no, I haven't. Maybe I should. Those are good things. Yeah.
Yeah, you did challenge me that way.
And then creative outlets. So just get creative and figure out what you're going to do to take care of yourself.
Okay, you just make it sound so easy, Gwen. That was the tone at the end. Like, okay, and just do this.
I also wrote, no one's going to do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves. Wouldn't it be nice if someone said, here's your calendar, and it's just perfect and built in, and all your self-care is here. But one of the things when I'm talking to professionals who overwork themselves, and sadly enough is low staffing, as a lot of people have, we're in a crisis with that people are working way beyond. And I always say, there was a movement. There were people who fought for our rights to have breaks, have lunch, have vacation. Don't let their work be in vain. We got to take these things, plan it in. I don't really like to hear when people say, oh, I don't take a vacation, I just take the money at the end.
Yeah.
No, your body needs a break.
I know. This is like my foster son, Valeriano. Oh my gosh. The other day it was like, he needs to take his vacation by August. It's like coming up. He's got to take this rest of the vacation. And he said, well, but if I take a week vacation, then I don't get the overtime. Like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's like,
it is. It's a lot.
It is a lot. Well, we probably ought to wrap things up here. If anybody else has a last second question. Oh, somebody else did just write in. So not only to take care of yourself, but to fill up your time so you can try and escape the constant thoughts of what's happening. Yeah, I know.
So the piece with that is kind of like what I say is, there are times you just have to put your grief down and escape. like I said, whether it's go to a movie, go out with a friend, just allow yourself to sit at the beach with a book. It's not that you're denying your grief and you're going to pick it up again later, but sometimes you just have to set it down because it's too much to carry it all the time.
Yeah. I mean, that's what my therapist tells me. That, like, you need to take your grief out. You can put it in a box and put it up on the shelf, knowing that in a little while, you're going to take it back down off the shelf and open it back up. And it's okay to allow yourself some time to put it away and put it on the shelf. Now, you can't put it away, stick it on the shelf in the furthest recesses of your closet and never look at it again.
Absolutely.
That is not good.
Not
but
good.
Putting it away for bits of time to give yourself breaks is vital. It's vital.
It is.
And I think about right away, it's so hard to wrap your head around having your child especially die, but having a loved one die in general too. You can't think about it every moment. If you try to think about it every moment, that's when you probably would go crazy.
Yes, it does overwhelm you.
Breaks.
Yeah. Yep. I love what she just said. That was beautiful.
I know. So she wrote, I found that doing my best to take care of myself really does honor my mom. When she was alive, she always told me to take care of yourself. That is a beautiful thought.
Yeah.
Do you want to read the last one?
Sure.
Here?
I read a quote recently that said, force it, meaning even when you don't feel like it, force it, and you might find it was worth it. It helped, and next time you find it easier. So I wrote it in my diary, force it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I've heard people say, sometimes, fake it until you make it. So that you just kind of go through the motions sometimes. No, not to the point where it's detrimental to you.
And if you're doing that in everything, then it's not fair to you. But there are times that we do have to force and go, you know what?
You have to push yourself a little bit, because if you didn't push yourself a little bit, then you might be stuck in that bedroom and never getting out of bed, never doing anything. So you do push yourself bits at a time.
Yeah. And when I think of the listeners and all their children, thinking of Brandolyn's comment with her mom, is that your children will want you to be the healthiest you could be. Like they didn't want their death to take away all the parts of you that they loved and cherished,
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
But
it is hard.
It is. It is. And I don't know if that, I just wanted to make sure that I was thinking in my head, I hope that ending comment didn't hurt someone.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love it when people say that, to be honest.
Okay.
It's always something that kind of bothers me. And so I'm like, I know, of course, Andy would want me to be happy. I know Andy does not want me to be miserable. But I also know that if I had been the one to die in that car accident, he would have been sad and would have been not, you know what I mean? It's it's a sad, horrible thing to happen.
It is.
So to make me now feel guilty for feeling sad, I don't want to feel guilty for feeling sad at all.
I get that. And I could tell, as soon as I said it, it's hard to describe. When I say that, what I think of is not, this is what I think of, honestly, not like, oh, you just have to, be happy all the time because that's what they'd want for you.
Yeah.
What they wouldn't want, though, is for your life to end and be drastically different, because it is for a season, but if you died when they died and never came back to some parts of life, that would be really sad. And that's the saddest part of my job.
And I always think to myself, there are so many things that you can say to yourself that other people can't say to you in some ways, and that's one of those comments. Like, I can say to myself, Andy wouldn't want me to be this sad.
Right. But you don't want
when
someone else
says that to me, I don't like it. But if I say that to myself, then it's okay. So
I get it. I'm so glad we can have these conversations and know that, because and this is hard for me because I hear the comments people tell themselves, and then I want other people to know that and hear them. But then it comes across like I'm saying it like you have to do
like
this.
preachy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, which I know you're not.
Yeah. No, but I'm glad we had that, because I wouldn't want to end on a note that someone said, oh my goodness. Yeah.
No. And anyway, thank you so much. Yes. You've made me feel better. Well, and you can probably tell, because I feel like I was a little bit, I just felt really weighed down at the beginning of this hour, and now I do feel a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
So
good.
Thank you for that, Gwen. You always do that to me.
Well, and I do check in on you, but I'm going to hold you a little more accountability in the next little bit to take care of yourself. So
okay,
I'm going to do that.
So now push that accountability on all of us, all the listeners, to try to do a better job taking care of yourself.
Right.
You know what? Next time we go on together, which I think is probably in about 6 weeks, we'll have to touch on that.
Yes.
We did better.
Yeah.
I don't know what the topic will be either. So if you have a topic that you'd like Gwen and I to discuss next time, please email me, Marcy, MARCY @andysmom.com, and give us some ideas on what we can talk about. So until next time, bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful or would like to support the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and comment. To help financially, you can text Andy's Mom to the number 53555 or visit the donate page on andysmom.com. Your donations are secure and tax deductible, and we are now able to accept Venmo, PayPal, and Apple Pay. Always Andy's Mom is a registered 501c3 organization and can receive donations through smile.amazon.com, Thrivent Financial, and Benevity, amongst others. Marcy loves hearing from listeners. Please feel free to reach out to her via email at marcy@andysmom.com. Also, be sure to sign up for the email list to receive weekly updates as well as pictures of all of Marcy's guests and their children. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.